August 23, 1942. Henschel UND Factory, Kassel, Germany. Oberingenieur Erwin Aders stood before the completed prototype, pride evident in his expression. The Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger represented the pinnacle of German armored engineering. 88 mm gun that could destroy any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. Frontal armor 100 mm thick that no Allied weapon could penetrate. Precision-engineered Maybach HL-230 engine producing 700 horsepower. Interleaved road wheels providing smooth ride and excellent cross-country performance. Gentlemen, Aders addressed the assembled engineers and Wehrmacht officers. We have created the most powerful tank in the world. One Tiger equals 10 enemy tanks in combat value. This vehicle will restore German armor superiority and reverse our fortunes in the East. The officers applauded. The Tiger was indeed magnificent, a masterpiece of engineering that would strike fear into Allied tankers from Russia to France. Hitler himself had demanded a super-heavy tank capable of destroying all opposition, and German industry had delivered beyond expectations. What Aders and the assembled experts didn't know, what none of the German engineers celebrating their technical triumph understood, was that they had created a strategic dead end. While they were perfecting the Tiger, a tank requiring 300,000 man-hours to build, consuming resources equivalent to 4 conventional tanks, needing components machined to tolerances measured in hundreds of millimeters. The Americans were revolutionizing tank production through methods German engineers dismissed as crude. In Detroit, American automotive engineers were adapting assembly line techniques to produce the M4 Sherman at rates that would have seemed impossible to European manufacturers. The Sherman wasn't as powerful as the Tiger. Its 75 mm gun couldn't penetrate Tiger frontal armor. Its armor couldn't stop the Tiger's 88 mm gun. In a one-on-one duel, the Tiger would win decisively. But war isn't fought one-on-one. It's fought by armies, supplied by industries, sustained by logistics. And in the mathematics of industrial warfare, the Americans had calculated a devastating equation. Build 5 adequate tanks in the time it takes to build 1 perfect tank, and quantity becomes quality. By war's end, Germany would produce 1,347 Tigers. America would produce 49,234 Shermans, 36 Shermans for every Tiger. The Tiger's technical superiority would be buried under an avalanche of adequacy. This is the story of how German perfectionism lost to American pragmatism, how engineering excellence was defeated by production efficiency, and how the invincible Tiger was destroyed by the unstoppable Sherman. The Tiger I emerged from Hitler's obsession with technical superiority and German industry's traditional emphasis on quality over quantity. After encountering Soviet T-34 and KV-1 tanks in 1941, which proved superior to existing German designs, Hitler demanded a heavy tank that could destroy any opponent. German engineers responded with characteristic thoroughness. The Tiger specifications were extraordinary. The 88 mm KWK-36 gun was adapted from the legendary 88 mm flak gun that had dominated battlefields from France to North Africa. It could fire a 22-pound armor-piercing round at 2,657 feet per second, capable of penetrating 120 millimeters of armor at 1,000 meters. In practical terms, it could destroy any Allied tank from distances where Allied guns couldn't even reach the Tiger. The armor protection was equally impressive. Frontal armor was 100 millimeters thick, angled in places for effective thickness approaching 140 millimeters. Side armor was 80 millimeters. This made the Tiger effectively invulnerable to the American 75 millimeters gun that armed most Shermans. Standard M61 armor-piercing rounds couldn't penetrate Tiger frontal armor even at point-blank range. The Maybach HL-230 P45 engine, a 12-cylinder gasoline power plant producing 700 horsepower, gave the 56-ton Tiger a top speed of 38 kilometers per hour on roads. The interleaved road wheel suspension, using overlapping wheels on both sides of the track, distributed weight better than conventional designs and provided excellent cross-country mobility. But this technical excellence came at devastating cost. Each Tiger required 300,000 man-hours to manufacture, 6 times the man-hours needed for a Panzer IV. The 88mm gun alone took 450 hours to manufacture, requiring precision boring and rifling. The armor plates required special steel alloys that consumed scarce resources. The engine, transmission, and final drives were precision-engineered components that could be manufactured only by skilled workers using specialized equipment. Production reflected this complexity. The Tiger entered service in August 1942. By December 1942, only 78 had been completed, barely 25 per month. Production peaked in April 1944 at 104 units. Total production from 1942 to 1944 was 1,347 Tigers. German industry, despite mobilizing its entire capacity for war production, couldn't build Tigers faster. Meanwhile, in the United States, a different philosophy was creating a different result. The M4 Sherman emerged from requirements issued in 1940 for a medium tank to replace the obsolete M3 Lee. American designers created a conventional design, 75mm gun in a fully rotating turret, cast or welded hull, simple suspension, gasoline or diesel engine, armor sufficient to stop German 37mm and 50mm guns, but not 75mm or 88mm weapons. German intelligence analysts dismissed the Sherman as mediocre, adequate against existing German tanks, but vulnerable to our guns, summarized a Wehrmacht intelligence report from 1942. Represents American mass production philosophy, quantity over quality. Properly deployed Tiger and Panther tanks will achieve favorable kill ratios. What German analysts missed was that the Sherman was designed for production. Every component was selected for ease of manufacturing, not optimal performance. The hull used simple angles that could be cast or welded by semi-skilled workers. The suspension used vertical volute springs, crude compared to German torsion bars, but simple to manufacture and maintain. The engine was a radial aircraft engine or diesel truck engine, both existing designs that didn't require developing new manufacturing capacity. The Sherman could be built on automotive assembly lines with minimal modification. The cast hull sections came from foundries that had been making engine blocks. The suspension components came from truck manufacturers. The engines came from aircraft or truck production lines. Final assembly used techniques adapted directly from automobile manufacturing. The result was production that German industry couldn't comprehend. The first Sherman was completed in February 1942. By December 1942, 2,411 had been produced, 30 times Tiger production in the same period. By the end of 1943, 21,247 Shermans had been built. Final production would reach 49,234 Shermans of all variants. The man-hour comparison was devastating. A Sherman required approximately 10,000 man-hours to complete, 1/30th the time required for a Tiger. An American automotive worker earning $1.50 per hour could build a Sherman. A Tiger required German master craftsmen earning equivalent wages, but producing output at a fraction of American rates. The strategic implications became apparent in North Africa. The first Tiger I tanks arrived in Tunisia in December 1942. German commanders deployed them with great ceremony, expecting these super tanks to restore German fortunes after the defeat at El Alamein. The initial encounters confirmed expectations. Tigers destroyed British and American tanks at ranges where return fire was impossible. On February 14, 1943, at Kasserine Pass, Tigers of the 501st Heavy Panzer Battalion spearheaded the German attack that routed American forces. American tankers discovered that their 75mm guns couldn't penetrate Tiger armor even at close range. The psychological impact was profound. American tank crews reported that Tigers seemed invincible, shrugging off hits that would destroy other German tanks. But American commanders noticed something that troubled German logistics officers. There were never many Tigers. A dozen Tigers at Kasserine achieved dramatic tactical success, but dozens of Shermans continued operating after being damaged. The Americans could afford losses. The Germans couldn't. Lieutenant Colonel Alvin Brown, commanding a Sherman battalion, filed a report after Kasserine. The German Tiger tank is superior to our M4 in gunpowder and armor protection. However, we observed only 10 to 12 Tigers during the entire engagement. Our battalion lost 18 Shermans, but received 22 replacement tanks within 72 hours. The Germans cannot replace their losses at equivalent rates. We can trade Shermans for Tigers at ratios of 3 or 4 to 1 and still win through numerical superiority. This calculation, that quantity could overwhelm quality if the quantity advantage was large enough, would prove prophetic. American doctrine evolved to emphasize this numerical advantage. Sherman platoons learned to engage Tigers from multiple directions simultaneously. While 1 or 2 Shermans attracted the Tigers' attention from the front, others would maneuver to flanks and rear where Tiger armor was vulnerable to 75mm guns. The tactics worked because there were always more Shermans. Lose 2 Shermans killing a Tiger, and replacements arrived within days. The Tiger, once destroyed, might not be replaced for weeks or months, if at all. The mathematics favored the Americans overwhelmingly. German tankers recognized the problem. Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann, who would become the highest-scoring tank ace of the war with 138 kills, wrote in early 1944, "The Tiger is a magnificent weapon. I have destroyed dozens of enemy tanks without loss. But always there are more enemy tanks. We destroy 5 and 10 more appear. The Americans and British have inexhaustible supplies of Shermans. We can kill them faster than they can kill us, but we cannot kill them faster than they can build them. This is the mathematics that will defeat us." The Tiger's technical sophistication created additional problems beyond production rates. Maintenance was complex and time-consuming, requiring specialized tools and trained mechanics. The interleaved road wheels, while providing excellent ride quality, froze solid in Russian winter conditions. Mud packed between overlapping wheels would freeze overnight, immobilizing the tank until the ice could be chipped away, a process taking hours. The Maybach engine, precisely engineered for maximum power, was sensitive to fuel quality, prone to overheating, and difficult to repair in field conditions. The transmission and final drives, handling the immense weight of the vehicle, failed regularly, particularly the early models, which had serious mechanical reliability issues. Tigers spent nearly as much time in repair as in operation. Sherman maintenance, by contrast, was simple. The vertical volute suspension was crude, but virtually indestructible. The radial engines were reliable and easy to service. Transmission and final drives were over-engineered for the Sherman's weight, making failures rare. A Sherman could operate for hundreds of miles between maintenance, and when maintenance was needed, crew members could perform it with basic tools. The operational readiness rates told the story. A Tiger unit with 30 tanks might have 15 to 20 operational on any given day. A Sherman battalion with 54 tanks typically had 45 to 50 operational. The Americans didn't just have more tanks total, they had more tanks available for combat at any given moment. The Tiger II, or King Tiger, introduced in 1944, exemplified German engineering taken to extremes. The Tiger II mounted a longer 88mm gun capable of penetrating any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 3,000 meters. Its frontal armor was 185mm thick, absolutely impervious to standard Allied anti-tank weapons. It was the most powerful tank of World War II. It was also a maintenance nightmare. Weighing 69.8 tons, the Tiger II's engine and transmission were barely adequate. The tank consumed fuel at prodigious rates, 1.7 liters per kilometer on roads, far more cross-country. Mechanical breakdowns were constant. Production was limited to 492 units total, with many lost to mechanical failure rather than combat. American tankers encountering Tiger IIs discovered that the best tactic was often to bypass them and call for air support or artillery. Why engage a supertank that required multiple Shermans to destroy when you could simply call down artillery or fighter bombers? The Americans had those supporting arms in abundance. The Germans didn't. The production philosophy differences extended beyond tanks themselves. German industry produced ammunition in relatively small batches to tight tolerances. American industry produced ammunition by the trainload to adequate tolerances. The German approach ensured each shell was perfect. The American approach ensured there were always enough shells. A Tiger carried 92 rounds of 88 mm ammunition. Resupply required specialized logistics. The 88 mm ammunition was heavy, bulky, and couldn't be shared with other vehicles. A Sherman carried 90 to 97 rounds of 75 mm ammunition, depending on variant, that could be resupplied from standard ammunition trucks serving multiple tank types. The American logistics system was simpler, more flexible, and more robust. The Battle of Arracourt in September 1944 illustrated the Sherman's numerical advantage, overwhelming Tiger quality. The 4th Armored Division, equipped entirely with Shermans, faced the 5th Panzer Army, including the 113th Panzer Brigade with 88 Panthers and 35 Panzer IVs, theoretically superior to Shermans, supported by Tiger units. Over 5 days of combat, American Shermans destroyed 281 German tanks and assault guns, while losing 31 American tanks. The kill ratio approached 9-1 in favor of supposedly inferior Shermans. The Americans achieved this through numerical superiority, superior tactics, excellent gunnery, and, critically, the knowledge that losses could be replaced immediately while German losses could not. German tankers at Arracourt fought skillfully with excellent equipment, but they were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and facing an enemy who could afford to lose tanks. Each Tiger destroyed was a strategic loss for the Germans. Each Sherman destroyed was a tactical inconvenience for the Americans. Replacements were already en route. The crew training disparity compounded the equipment advantage. American tank crews trained for 6 months before entering combat, firing thousands of practice rounds. By 1944, American gunnery standards exceeded German standards. American crews could engage targets at longer ranges with higher first-round hit probability than German crews. German training time collapsed as the war progressed. By 1944, Tiger crews might have only weeks of training before combat due to fuel shortages and the desperate need for replacements. The Tiger's technical advantages meant little when crewed by inadequately trained soldiers facing veteran Sherman crews with months of combat experience. The operational flexibility of Sherman production proved decisive during the Battle of the Bulge. German forces launched their last major offensive in December 1944, achieving initial surprise and destroying hundreds of American tanks. The offensive should have been catastrophic for American armor. Instead, replacement Shermans flooded into the battle area. Within a week, American armored units had replaced their losses and were counterattacking. The Germans, by contrast, had committed their last operational reserves. Tanks lost in the Bulge couldn't be replaced. The offensive collapsed partly from lack of fuel, but also from lack of replacements for destroyed vehicles. The production statistics reveal the magnitude of American advantage. In 1944 alone, America produced 17,565 Sherman tanks. Germany produced 5,966 tanks total of all types: Tigers, Panthers, Panzer IVs, assault guns. The Americans were outproducing total German tank production by 3:1, while simultaneously producing thousands of other armored vehicles, aircraft, ships, and weapons. The cost comparison was equally stark. A Tiger cost approximately 250,000 Reichsmarks to produce. A Sherman cost $44,556, roughly equivalent to 178,000 Reichsmarks at official exchange rates, probably less at real purchasing power. The Americans were producing tanks faster and cheaper than German industry could match. The resource consumption disparity was staggering. A Tiger required special steel alloys containing molybdenum, tungsten, and other rare metals. As these resources became scarce, Tiger armor quality declined. Shermans used standard steel with basic alloying materials. America had an effectively unlimited supply. German perfectionism extended to trained specialists. A Tiger required assembly by master craftsmen who had trained for years. A Sherman was assembled by workers who might have been farmers or housewives months earlier, trained in weeks to perform specific tasks on assembly lines. The American approach democratized production, allowing semi-skilled workers to achieve results that German industry thought required master craftsmen. The post-war analysis was devastating for German military philosophy. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey concluded that German industry's emphasis on quality over quantity had been strategically counterproductive. German tanks were individually superior, but too complex for mass production. American tanks were adequate and optimized for mass production, and adequacy in overwhelming numbers proved superior to excellence in inadequate numbers. Albert Speer, German Minister of Armaments, acknowledged in his memoirs that German production philosophy was flawed. We built the best tanks in the world, but we didn't build enough of them. The Americans built adequate tanks and built tens of thousands. In a war of attrition, quantity matters more than quality beyond a certain threshold. A Tiger was worth 3 Shermans in combat, but the Americans built 30 Shermans for every Tiger. The mathematics was against us from the beginning. The Soviet comparison was equally instructive. Soviet T-34 tanks were crude compared to German tanks. Poor optics, uncomfortable crew conditions, rough finish. But Soviet industry produced 84,070 T-34s during the war. The Germans couldn't destroy T-34s faster than Soviet factories built them. Soviet production philosophy paralleled American philosophy. Adequate quality in overwhelming quantity. The Tiger's individual superiority was undeniable. In one-on-one combat, a Tiger would destroy a Sherman almost every time at any range. German tank aces achieved kill ratios that seemed incredible. Wittmann claimed 138 tanks destroyed. Otto Carius claimed 150 plus. Kurt Nispel claimed 168. These numbers testified to Tiger effectiveness when properly employed by skilled crews. But these aces represented a tiny fraction of Tiger crews, and their victories didn't change strategic outcomes. Wittmann was killed in Normandy by British Shermans that swarmed his Tiger from multiple directions. Carius survived, but saw his unit destroyed by overwhelming Allied numbers. Nispel's victories didn't prevent Germany's defeat. Individual excellence couldn't overcome systemic numerical inferiority. American tank crews didn't achieve comparable individual scores, not because of inferior skill, but because of different tactical employment. American doctrine emphasized team tactics, platoons working together to achieve objectives. Sherman crews were trained to support each other, maneuver in coordination, and overwhelm opponents through combined firepower rather than individual dueling. This philosophical difference reflected broader cultural differences. German military tradition emphasized individual heroes, the ace pilot, the tank ace, the decorated soldier. American tradition emphasized teamwork, the squad, the platoon, the company working together. In industrial warfare, the American approach proved more effective. The Sherman's adequacy extended to adaptability. When the 75mm gun proved inadequate against heavy German armor, the Americans developed the 76mm gun that could penetrate Panther frontal armor at reasonable ranges. When even more firepower was needed, the British mounted their excellent 17-pounder gun in Sherman hulls, creating the Sherman Firefly that could destroy Tigers frontally. The Sherman chassis proved adaptable to multiple roles. Tank destroyers, self-propelled artillery, armored recovery vehicles, mine clearance vehicles, flamethrower tanks. The standardized design meant that specialized variants could be produced rapidly. German special-purpose vehicles, by contrast, were often unique designs requiring separate production lines. The global reach of American production was unprecedented. Shermans were produced not just in the United States, but also in Canada. They were shipped to Britain, the Soviet Union, France, China, anywhere Allied forces operated. The Sherman became the standard Allied tank, with crews from multiple nations operating it effectively. Spare parts, ammunition, and maintenance were standardized across theaters. German tanks, by contrast, were theater-specific. Tigers operated in Europe and North Africa, but rarely elsewhere. The logistics tail required to support Tigers was immense: specialized ammunition, spare parts, trained mechanics, recovery vehicles. Each Tiger required its own supporting infrastructure. Shermans shared a common infrastructure that simplified logistics enormously. The Battle of Cologne in March 1945 provided symbolic closure to the Tiger versus Sherman story. An American Sherman commanded by Sergeant Robert Early encountered a Tiger in the streets of Cologne. The engagement was filmed by a camera crew, providing one of the few documented Tiger versus Sherman duels. The Tiger fired first, hitting the Sherman's turret but failing to penetrate. Early maneuvered rapidly, getting a side shot, and destroyed the Tiger with a single 76 mm round through the side armor. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. It illustrated that tactical superiority, position, surprise, maneuvering, mattered more than technical superiority. The Sherman, supposedly inferior, destroyed the Tiger through superior tactics. By April 1945, German tank production had essentially ceased. Factories were destroyed, resources were exhausted, skilled workers were dead or captured. The remaining Tigers and Panthers sat immobilized for lack of fuel. American Sherman production continued at full capacity until victory was assured. The last Shermans were completed in July 1945, long after Germany's surrender. The final tallies revealed the magnitude of American production victory. Germany produced approximately 1,347 Tigers, 492 Tiger IIs, 6,000 Panthers, and 8,500 Panzer IVs, roughly 16,000 tanks total. The United States produced 49,234 Shermans alone, plus thousands of other tank types. The Americans outproduced German tank production by 3-1 while simultaneously outproducing German production in every other category: aircraft, ships, trucks, artillery, ammunition. The Sherman wasn't a better tank than the Tiger in any measurable category except reliability and ease of production. But reliability and ease of production proved more important than firepower and armor protection in the strategic calculation. The Americans understood that war is won by armies, not by individual weapons, and armies require mass production of adequate weapons more than limited production of perfect weapons. Modern military analysts studying World War II armor warfare consistently conclude that the Sherman was the right tank for the war America fought. It was reliable enough to cross continents. It was simple enough to maintain in field conditions. It was adequate enough to kill German tanks when properly employed. And it was producible enough to overwhelm German armor through sheer numbers. The Tiger was the wrong tank for the war Germany needed to fight. It was too complex for German industry to mass produce. It was too sophisticated for German logistics to maintain in adequate numbers. It was too resource-intensive for Germany's limited industrial capacity. And it was too rare to achieve strategic impact regardless of tactical effectiveness. The German engineers who designed the Tiger created a technical masterpiece. But they created a strategic failure. They optimized for individual excellence rather than mass production, for perfect quality rather than adequate quantity, for engineering achievement rather than industrial capacity. These choices reflected German industrial culture, traditional emphasis on craftsmanship, precision, quality. But they were unsuited to modern industrial warfare. The American engineers who designed the Sherman created a vehicle that German engineers might have dismissed as crude or unsophisticated. But they created a strategic success. They optimized for production rates, for ease of manufacturing, for logistics sustainability, for crew training efficiency. These choices reflected American industrial culture, mass production, interchangeable parts, semi-skilled labor. And these choices proved ideally suited to industrial warfare. The final assessment must acknowledge that on the battlefield, tank for tank, the Tiger was superior. German tankers who fought in Tigers testified to their power, their protection, their psychological impact on Allied crews. But they also testified to always being outnumbered, to never having enough Tigers to defend all sectors, to watching irreplaceable vehicles destroyed knowing they couldn't be replaced. American tankers who fought in Shermans rarely claimed their tanks were better than Tigers. But they knew that when a Sherman was destroyed, a replacement would arrive within days. They knew that ammunition would never run short. They knew that their unit would receive reinforcements, while German units withered away through attrition. They understood that their adequacy in overwhelming numbers was defeating German excellence in inadequate numbers. In 1985, at a reunion of American and German tank veterans, former Tiger Commander Otto Carius met former Sherman Commander Clarence Smoyer. The two discussed their experiences, comparing vehicles and tactics. Carius acknowledged that the Tiger was the better tank. Smoyer agreed. Then Smoyer asked, "How many Tigers did your unit have at peak strength?" Carius answered, 14. Smoyer replied, "My battalion had 54 Shermans, and when we lost tanks, we got replacements within a week. That's why we won." The exchange captured the essential truth. German engineers built the Tiger to be invincible, and it was nearly invincible in individual combat. But American mechanics built 5 Shermans for every Tiger, and 5 adequate tanks beat one excellent tank through mathematics that no amount of German engineering could overcome. The Tiger was the perfect tank. The Sherman was the right tank. And in industrial warfare, right beats perfect every time.